Okay, so the Torah portion this week really stands out because the Torah portion this week is Balak, named after an idol worshiper, and not just an idol worshiper, but an anti-Semite, someone who sought to destroy all the Jewish people. And the obvious question is, why would we name a Torah portion after such a virulent anti-Semite idol worshiper? What's the point of giving this guy such a stage on the world stage of the Torah forever? There's a rule in the Talmud. The Talmud says that you only are supposed to name your children after a righteous person, like Avremel. You're named after Avraham Avinu, right? You're awesome. But not just name your child after a wicked person. The Talmud says the name of the wicked should be you don't mention them. The Talmud says about a story about a man named Ben Kamser. Ben Kamser had this unique gift. He's able to write down all four letters of Hashem's name at the same time. He's able to hold four pens together and write down the Yud and the Hey and the Vav and the Hey of Hashem's name at once at the same time. That way, there's no need to interrupt in the writing from the four letters of Hashem's name because you wrote them all at the same time. But he really was not interested in divulging his technique. And the Talmud said, because of this, you cannot name your children after him, because the name of the wicked should not be mentioned. It wasn't good that he held that secret to himself. If he would have divulged that, he would have given out that secret. Until today, we would have people that could do that. But because he kept it to himself, so therefore we don't name our children after Ben Kamser. Talmud says another story about a woman who named her child Doeg. Doeg was also the name of Doeg Hadomi, the one who caused the death of a whole family, whole city of Kohanim, the city of Nov. He reported to King Saul how King David was protected by the Kohanim in the city of Nov, and he knew what this would cause, and all the death of all of these Kohanim. There was a woman who actually named her son Doeg, and the Talmud says that though she was very pious and very vigilant about her son's welfare, Talmud says that she would donate to the temple whenever her son gained a pound. She would donate a pound more of gold to the temple, and yet, unfortunately, he had a bitter end. When there was a hunger in the time of the temple, he passed away, and his mother, Paul Tzlan, needed his remains to survive. So it's not just not a good thing to mention someone's name. It's a dangerous thing. Mention the name of the wicked, as we've seen these stories in the Talmud. So why is it that we have this whole Torah portion named after this wicked man Balak? And the answer to this is very relevant to the time that we're in now. We're now between the 3rd and 12th of Tammuz, which is the anniversary of the redemption of the previous Rebbe. He was first released from prison on the 3rd of Tammuz and sent into exile. On the 12th of Tammuz, he was completely released from the exile of the city of Kostroma. And this redemption, the previous Rebbe, as we were discussing last week, the previous Rebbe's redemption was in a way that not just you could see how it's connected to something beyond nature, but it's completely defied and completely the opposite of nature. The very same people who arrested him were the ones who freed him. So in the story of the previous Rebbe, which you have to read, the book called The Heroic Struggle by Rabbi Alter Metzger, he puts together all of the various accounts of the previous Rebbe's imprisonment in a seamless, readable way. You just read it like a story. It's amazing. Anyway, so the emphasis that we see in the previous Rebbe's redemption is that the very same people that arrested him freed him. It wasn't that they all died and he was freed, but there was a transformation. You could see that they were like silly putty, that they weren't able to just do what they wanted to do. They themselves had to free him, like in the story of Balak. Balak, he wanted to curse he hired Bilam to curse the Jewish people, and yet through Balak bankrolling Bilam's curses, the greatest blessings emerged to Jewish people. The blessings of coming of Mashiach, the greatest blessings that we ever have, came from Balak. So this highlights that evil and goodness are both creations of Hashem. And evil doesn't have a content unto itself. We were discussing last week of the previous Rebbe, when he was in prison, he said he felt like Moshe Rabbeinu on Mount Sinai. How do you feel like Moshe Rabbeinu? Because he said Moshe Rabbeinu didn't know what time it was. He had to listen to the song of the angels to know what time it was. So too, the previous Rebbe said, how did I know what time it was? I knew the order of the prison. Based on the order of the prison, I knew what time it was. So the question is, how could he compare himself to the state that Moshe was in on Mount Sinai, the most elevated state possible, to his being in prison? The answer is that he realized that there is no entity of evil unto itself. Evil is a creation of Hashem. So this will help us understand the title of the Torah, of this week's Torah portion, Balak. On the surface, you think, well, the Torah has to choose the first word of the Torah to use as a title. The Torah uses Balak, but it's not the answer. Everything in the Torah is precise. Everything in the Torah is meaningful. It's the opposite. It's because this is a title of the Torah, that's why it's the first word. It's not that the title of the Torah is because it's the first word. It's that the first word of the Torah is going to be what the title and content, a word that expresses the content of that Torah portion. So here, actually, the Torah doesn't choose the first word. The first word of the Torah portion is Vayar. And and he saw. And we have the word and he saw in other Torah portions. Vayera, Va'era, Vayetze. We have similar words of the Torah, of titles of the Torah portion. And the Torah could have used that word as a title of the Torah portion. And the Torah doesn't. The Torah skips that one and specifically chooses the name Balak. And the question is, why? What's the Torah doing here? What's the Torah showing us? So, simple answer is, well, although you're not supposed to mention the names of the wicked, but if it's mentioned in the Torah, the Talmud says you're allowed to mention the names of the wicked. Okay, but that's just an allowance. That's just an allowance. That makes it permissible to mention it. But it doesn't tell us why we should specifically choose in the name of this Nazi, we should call the whole name of the Torah after Balak. What's the point of that? So, to understand this, we have to first explain a little bit better. Why is it, indeed, that if an idol is mentioned in the Torah, then you're allowed to mention that idol? The Talmud says that you are allowed to mention the names of idols if they're mentioned in the Torah. So the Gaonim write, the reason you're allowed to do this is because if the Torah mentioned this idol, it for sure no longer exists. That's what the Gaonim write. The problem with what the Gaonim are saying was that historically we don't see that. For example, the Torah talks about, in the end of this week's Torah portion, about the people who deify the Baal Pa'er, who defecate in front of the Baal Pa'er, and that idol didn't stop to exist. The Talmud talks about how the laws of people who defecate to the Baal Pa'er, and the Talmud says stories of people who did this. So we see that this idol worship continue. So how can we say, like the Gaonim are saying, if the Torah mentions it, it for sure it doesn't exist anymore? So what the Gaonim mean, and the purpose of mentioning the name of the idol, the name of the wicked, is this: who created idol worship? Who creates everything of them? Who created everything?
Hashem.
Yes. So Hashem created idol worship. Why did Hashem create idol worship? The purpose of creating idol worship is in order that we should be able to fulfill the mitzvah of the Torah, thou shalt not have any other gods. The reason why there are idols in the world is because Hashem wants us to have this mitzvah. So the real existence of idol worship is idol worship is a tool to fulfill the mitzvah, thou shalt not have any other gods. That's a content. That's what idol worship is about. That's what its true reality is. Its purpose is to fulfill the mitzvah, you shall not have any other gods. There's a law on Shabbos that you're not allowed to carry outside in a public domain, or you're not allowed to carry from a private domain to a public domain. And the Talmud says you only violate that that prohibition biblically in a way that you're culpable for consequence if you carry a certain amount. One second, let me do it for you so it doesn't fall down. You're only culpable. No problem. You're only culpable if you carry a certain amount of food, for example. You carry a date's worth of food, a measurement of a date worth of food, then you're culpable. What happens if you carry less than a date? You're not culpable. What if you're carrying that date in a pot? The pot is the size. If you carry the pot up by itself, you would be liable, the punishment for transgressing Shabbos. But if you carry less than a date of food in this pot, not only are you not liable for carrying the food, not liable for carrying the pot either. Why? Because what's the purpose of this pot? Hold the date. And the date is less than the amount. So we see from this passage in the Talmud that the purpose of something defines it. We don't consider the carrying of the pot to be significant because the pot is only about carrying this minimal amount of food. So the content of what the pot is the pot is viewed in the perspective of Torah as the size of less than a date of food. It's about carrying the food. And so too with this, with the Torah mentioning idolatry. The Torah mentioned idolatry. What is the purpose of the Torah mentioning it? The Torah is highlighting that idolatry is not a thing. Idolatry doesn't exist. As the Torah talks on how people who followed idolatry, that they didn't help them. The Torah talks about how when the Jews left Egypt, for example, how the idols of the Egyptians didn't help them. The Torah's purpose in mentioning the idolatry is to, in the contrary, is to display how the idolatry has no content, has no value, how it's meaningless. Like for example, there's a law in the Talmud that you're allowed to make fun of idolatry. You're allowed to scorn idolatry. Why can you scorn idolatry? Because you're not, the reason why you're not allowed to mention idolatry is because you're not supposed to give credence to it. But by scorning it, you're not giving credence to it. There used to be a custom in Jewish day schools, in the shtetl, in the small little towns of Europe. They would write down the name of Balak on a piece of paper, and then the kids would step on it and rip it. So why are you writing it down on the paper? You're not trying to immortalize Amalek. You're trying to show the kids how Amalek's name is supposed to be destroyed. Amalek's name is supposed to be forgotten. Amalek's name is supposed to be eradicated. So the idea of the Torah writing about idolatry is the Torah is expressing how this idolatry has no content. It's not. I mean, you think if the Torah is mentioning it, it's immortalizing. It's making it last forever. But it's the opposite. The Torah mentioning it, the truth mentioning it, expresses what its true content is. What's the true content of idolatry? It's nothing for itself. It's just to bring out the truth of Torah. And this explains another story in the Talmud. The Talmud says a story about this certain sage that he mentioned the name of idolatry. They asked him, "How'd you mention the name of the idolatry?" He said, "This is one of the idolatries that are mentioned in the Torah." Okay, but again, that only allows idolatry to be mentioned. Why did he specifically go out of his way to mention the idolatry? And the answer is again, who was he? He was a man whose whole essence was Torah. And he somehow saw in the world needed to negate this idolatry. And therefore, he mentioned the idolatry in order to negate the idolatry. He was like a Torah. His mention of idolatry was like a Torah mentioning of idolatry. So similar with the thing over here in this week's Torah portion, that this week's Torah portion talks about Balak and Bilam, and Torah is titled Balak, that by the Torah calling the attention to Balak, what the Torah is doing is actually displaying how the existence of evil, what is evil, it's only meant to be a tool for holiness. We learned yesterday about the snake, that and last week we learned with the snake about how the Jewish people were bitten by these snakes and they were healed by looking at the copper snake. What does that mean, looking at the copper snake? So we learned what that means is that they realized that the issues that they were having in the physical world were coming from Hashem. Although it looks like a snake, it looks like something unholy, some of their force by itself. But they looked up on the copper snake, and the message of looking up at the copper snake is looking in heaven and seeing how this thing that's happening to me is actually coming from Hashem. This is what the previous Rebbe's redemption expressed. They expressed how the purpose of evil in the first place, the same people that arrested him, they actually caused a redemption. They caused an exponential growth. All the previous activities to this very day, through the 12th of Tammuz, through their arrest, they caused a new yontif, a new revelation of godliness to the world that is unprecedented. Like the Rebbe describes it, they released the previous Rebbe as Chag HaChag, the holiday of all holidays. That there never was such a thing the Jewish people had like the 12th of Tammuz. It's the holiday of all holidays. It caused such a revival and a renaissance in Judaism through his arrest. So this highlights also with Balak. Balak and hires Bilam. What happens? The prophecies of the coming Mashiach are brought to the world. Any questions so far, Dr. Bresson? Oh, good. Okay. So another point in this week's Torah portion connected to this. Balak, among other things, talking the prophecy of the coming Mashiach and the future and the destiny of the Jewish people, he says they bend, they lie down like a lion. Who can lift them up? So the Talmud says this prophecy refers to the Jewish people, the time of the temple, the end of the time of the temple, the end of the time of the first temple of Tzidkiah, King Tzidkiah, and how Jewish people were down, Jewish people were subjugated to the rule of the anti-Semitic Gentiles, and the temple was destroyed, and they were lying down. They were lying down. So the Tzemach connects this verse to Vayishka, Vayirdam, a person who lying down and falls asleep, to being in a state of unconsciousness, being in a state of not yourself. That's what this verse is referring to. But the same verse is talking about our being brought down, lying down, asleep. The Torah emphasizes who's lying down. Who's lying down is a lion is lying. It means we're not bereft of our gifts just because we are seemingly under the hands of the Gentiles, but the opposite. Even as it seems that they are destroying our Hashem's temple and they're exiling us, we are really not under the rules at all of nature. The beautiful a translation of the Malbim on the Rebbe's capital this year. In the Rebbe's capital, it says, "I lift my eyes to the heavens." The Malbim says, ordinarily a person looks through natural means to bring Hashem's blessings to the world. Doesn't only look at the heavens. But this verse emphasizes, I don't look at natural means. I only look to the heavens. It's a time when you only look to the heavens. There's no nature is meaningless. So although a Jew may be in exile, he's not in exile because of the Gentiles. As a previous Rebbe said when he was on the train platform on the way to Kashtama, the previous Rebbe said, "May Hashem be with us, like He was with our forefathers. He shall not leave us and not forsake us." And then he said this: "It was not with our will that we went into exile. It is not with our will that we will leave the exile. It is our Father, our King, who put us into exile, and it's Hashem who will take us out of it." However, he said, this all nations of the world should know that only our bodies are in exile. But in regards to our souls, in regards to Torah mitzvahs, we are not under the jurisdiction of the exile, and we have the full power to keep the Torah mitzvahs. That's what he said. So, in other words, he's saying the exile is only in our bodies. In regards to Torah mitzvahs, we are the lion. We're able to fulfill Torah mitzvahs as the previous Rebbe encouraged, and as the Jewish people did, and then in Soviet Russia, they kept Torah mitzvahs under the watchful eye of the KGB, enduring the harshest of punishments, and we can't even imagine. And they did this steadfast determination of Mesiras Nefesh, absolute devotion to Hashem. And this devotion to Hashem, under these circumstances, brought about the next part of the verse. What does the next part of the verse say? The next part of the verse says, "Who will raise them?" He lies down like a lion. Who will raise him? The word "who" refers to Hashem Himself. Hashem is beyond all definition. That's why He's called Who. Who? Hashem was called Who. He will raise them. What causes Hashem to raise us is by us being like the lion. The lion not being affected at all by what the nations of the world say, what they determine that the Jewish people, how they should act. But instead, a Jew is proud in his Torah and his mitzvahs. And like Rabbi David Lobello has 4 Israeli flags on his car, Chaim David. The Jew is proud of Chaim. The Jew is proud of who he is. And he's not afraid of anything. This is not because of nature. Our strength is because we're like a lion because of a connection to Hashem. This is also going to just another interesting point about this. Reb Shimshon Astropolia writes that if you write down the name Bilam, you write down the name Balak underneath each other, so you'll have the name Bilam horizontally and Balak horizontally, but you'll also take the first two letters of Bilam, Bil, and the first letters of Amalek, you have the name of Bilam vertically as well. Same as with Amalek. If you write Bilam and Balak on top, Bilam top of Balak, then you will have the name Amalek vertically. Amalek, Lake. So similarly, if you take the two words, Yira and Av, fear of Hashem and love of Hashem, you put those two names on top of each other, so you will have Yira and Ava vertically, horizontally, and also vertically. Yira, Yud and Reish in the top line, and Aleph and Hey in the bottom line. The same as with Ava. Aleph Hey in the top line and Beis Hey on the bottom line. So this highlights two things. Number one, it highlights how a lot of people that that look at the exile, look at the challenges, and they think that we have to get out of the exile with our hands, with our feet, with our strength, with our natural power. And as a previous Rebbe emphasized, it's not with our natural power we went into exile. It's not with our power, our physical strength that we leave the exile. It's not because of our strength that our lack of strength that we're in exile. And it's not because of our strength that we will leave the exile. It's Hashem. So if someone comes around and he says, well, Bilam and Balak are both connected to the Jewish people. Amalek, he comes from Lavan, who was the grandfather of the Jewish people, if you think about it. Someone says, I'm a prophet like Bilam. I have prophecy. So Torah emphasizes to us and tells us that you never lower the principles of Torah. Even if someone comes as a prophet, and even if someone says that they are from the Jewish people, the Jewish people have only one guidepost, the Torah of light, the Torah of life. And no matter how well positioned the authority is that advises the Jew to veer from Torah, the Jew knows that prophecy doesn't matter, and the and yichus and the lineage doesn't matter. The Jew follows Torah and only Torah. This is also connected to Yira and Ava. A person might say, you know why you have to lower the standards of Torah? Just so lower the standards of Torah because we want to bring Jews closer to Torah. Because of our love for our fellow Jew, we have to lower the standards. Don't you care that Jews aren't keeping Torah? If you cared, you would lower the standards of Torah. But the truth is that the Torah puts over here fear before love. That even our love of our fellow Jew has to be based on our reverence for Torah, and according to we can't be more religious than Hashem. We can't go out and try to reach out to Jews in a way that's contrary to Torah because it won't work. Idealism does bring to ingenuity. If we follow the formula of Yira before Ava, our first guidepost is with the Tez and the Torah, this will help us also to find a successful and best route for love, for reaching out to fellow Jews and inspiring them. And also an antidote to so the first message from this arrangement of Yira and Ava and Bilam and Balak is that we don't pay attention to Bilam and Balak. What they say, you look at Yira and Ava, look at what the Torah says first. And the second message we have also is the antidote to Amalek. Amalek causes us to be frigid in our service of Hashem. Amalek represents coldness, and Bilam represents being smarter than thou. Bilam, the Talmud says, was someone who knew Hashem and rebelled against Hashem. So the antidote to these two kinds of spiritual diseases is Av and your love and reverence for Hashem. Not to pay attention to the intellect and look at the intellect as the highest Dazal and Izal. Not to look at frigidity as a way of life, but love and reverence for Hashem is the antidote for Amalek. And this is a Torah portion that we're reading now in the time of Yubei's Talmud. Time is the time of redemption of the previous Rebbe. All the redemptions are connected to each other. All redemptions have a connection to each other. The Talmud says that if you drop a bit of milk into a meat mixture, there's 6 times more meat than milk. What's it, halacha? You know, Ramel?
Bagat is animal with it.
Right. So it's kosher. It's kosher because you can't taste the milk. But what happens if after the rabbi declared it kosher, another drop of milk falls in?
Because they need
That's right.
also.
That it's not it's forbidden now. Why? Because the first drop of milk meets, the Talmud says, the other drop of milk, and it revives its taste. Taste was nullified, but now if there's not 60 times against both drops of milk, then the both liquid additions to this pot, then the pot is not kosher. So that shows us also regards to our redemptions. Every redemption Hashem gave the Jewish people is alive. It's alive. It exists. There comes now another day of redemption, day of the previous Shabbat. It revives all the redemptions the Jewish people ever had, starting from the first redemption from Egypt. Redemption from Egypt wasn't just about one day of redemption. It was about leading us to the coming of Mashiach. It didn't finish with the exile of Egypt, and the exile of the coming Mashiach didn't start with one redemption. The first redemption from Egypt leads us to the redemption of Mashiach. And every redemption Hashem gives the Jewish people, it revives all the previous redemptions that Hashem gave us, and it brings us to the redemption of Mashiach Tzidkenu. The way we get there is me, Kimeno, by being like a lion. We don't have to contend with the kind of opposition that the Jews did in Soviet Russia in time the previous Rebbe. We have to have the same strength. As the previous Rebbe said, Mesiras Nefesh, sacrifice means Azoynit Anders. This way it has to be, can't be any other way. It has to be the idea of the strength that comes from your core. It has to be this way. It can't be another way.